What if I told you that one of the most ordinary things in your daily life is actually shaping your identity, your morality, and even your destiny? Not money, not power, not success, but something far more subtle. For thousands of years, entire civilizations have drawn invisible lines, declaring certain things pure and others forbidden. Families divided over it. Nations built laws around it. Religions defined holiness by it. But here's the real question. Are these boundaries about control, about survival, or about something deeper in the human mind? Today, we're not just talking about rules. We're exploring how what we accept or reject reveals who we are, what we believe, and how societies decide what is clean, unclean, moral, immoral, sacred, or profane. Stay with me, because by the end of this video, you may start questioning which invisible lines are quietly shaping your own life. One animal, 3 religions, billions of followers, and one of the oldest and most misunderstood divisions in human history. Why do Jews refuse to eat pork? Why do Muslims strictly forbid it? And why do Christians, who also read the Hebrew Bible, eat it freely? This isn't really about taste. It's not about cuisine. And it's not even primarily about health. It's about identity. It's about obedience. It's about what it means to belong to God. And most of all, it's about how 3 faiths that claim roots in the same patriarch, Abraham, walked 3 different philosophical paths. Stay with me until the end, because what we uncover is far deeper than a dietary restriction. It reveals how different traditions understand law, purity, freedom, and the human heart itself. Let's begin at the beginning. Part 1. The birth of sacred boundaries. Long before Christianity, long before Islam, before there was even a nation called Israel, there was a wandering people, descendants of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, being shaped into something new. According to the Hebrew scriptures, God did not merely rescue these people from slavery in Egypt. He formed them into a covenant community. And with that covenant came laws, not random rules, but identity-forming commands. Among them were dietary laws, carefully outlined in books like Leviticus and Deuteronomy. Certain animals were declared clean, others unclean, and the pig was explicitly forbidden. But why? Why would an all-powerful God concern himself with what ends up on a dinner plate? From a philosophical perspective, the answer lies in 3 dimensions: holiness, identity, and symbolic order. 1. Holiness is separation. In the Hebrew worldview, holiness does not simply mean moral goodness. It means separation, distinction, being set apart. Israel was called to be a holy nation. That meant visibly different from surrounding cultures, cultures that practiced child sacrifice, ritual magic, and idolatry. Food became a daily ritual of difference. Every meal reinforced the same truth. You are not like the nations. You belong to Yahweh. The pig, therefore, was not just an animal. It became a boundary marker. To eat differently was to live differently. 2. Identity through practice. In the ancient Near East, sharing meals symbolized unity and shared belief. Eating what pagans ate could imply participation in their worldview. The prohibition of pork functioned as a social and spiritual firewall. It preserved communal identity. It ensured that faith was not merely internal belief, but embodied discipline. For thousands of years, Jewish communities maintained this distinction, sometimes even under persecution. Refusing pork became an act of loyalty to covenant. It wasn't about preference. It was about faithfulness. 3. Order in a chaotic world. Some scholars note that animals classified as unclean often blurred symbolic categories, neither fully this nor fully that. The pig, for example, has split hooves but does not chew the cud. It appears to fit the category but ultimately does not. In a culture deeply concerned with cosmic order, such ambiguity symbolized disorder. By avoiding these animals, Israel participated in maintaining a symbolic harmony, a world aligned with divine structure. Whether for theological, communal, or even health-related reasons, the result was the same. For Judaism, abstaining from pork became a living expression of covenant identity. And that identity endures to this day. But what about Islam? Part 2. Submission and purity in Islam. Islam emerged in the 7th century, in a region already familiar with Jewish dietary traditions. When the Quran was revealed, it reaffirmed the prohibition of pork clearly and repeatedly. Unlike Judaism, however, which ties dietary law specifically to the covenant at Sinai. Islam presents the prohibition as universally binding for believers. Why? To understand this, we must examine the core meaning of Islam itself. The word Islam means submission. A Muslim is one who submits to the will of God. 1. Obedience as worship. In Islamic theology, obedience is not secondary, it is central. Even when a command's rationale is not fully explained, submission demonstrates trust. When God forbids pork, the faithful response is simple. We hear and we obey. This transforms dietary restriction into devotion. Avoiding pork becomes an act of worship. 2. Ritual purity. Islam places significant emphasis on cleanliness, both physical and spiritual. The pig is considered impure, najis. Therefore, abstaining from it aligns with a broader system of purification that shapes prayer, daily habits, and communal life. Purity here is not merely symbolic, it structures life. 3. Continuity of revelation. Islam views itself as confirming and completing earlier revelations, the Torah, the Psalms, and the Gospel. Since pork was prohibited in the Torah, its continued prohibition reflects divine consistency. For Muslims, this is not regression, it is preservation. Across continents, from Indonesia to Morocco, the command remains unified. The pig remains forbidden. So now we see two traditions, Judaism and Islam, both abstaining. Yet Christianity takes a different path. What changed? Part 3. Jesus and the reframing of purity. Jesus of Nazareth was born a Jew. He lived as a Jew. He followed Jewish law. There is no evidence that Jesus ever ate pork. And yet Christianity, the movement that followed him, eventually did. The shift begins with a radical philosophical move. In the Gospel of Mark, during a dispute about ritual hand-washing, Jesus makes a startling claim. It is not what enters a person that makes them unclean, but what comes out of them. This is not a minor clarification. It is a paradigm shift. Jesus relocates impurity from the outside to the inside, from stomach to heart, from food to intention. 1. Internal versus external morality. The religious leaders of his time emphasized ritual precision. Jesus emphasized inner transformation. Evil, he argued, does not originate in diet but in desire, greed, envy, pride, hatred. This does not instantly abolish dietary law, but it reframes purity. The center of moral gravity shifts inward. 2. The vision of Peter. Years later, in the book of Acts, the Apostle Peter has a vision. A sheet descends from heaven filled with animals, clean and unclean alike. A voice says, "Rise, kill, and eat." Peter resists. He has never eaten anything unclean. The voice responds, "What God has made clean, do not call impure." At first glance, this appears to cancel dietary law. But Peter himself explains the meaning. The vision was about people. Gentiles, previously considered outside covenant boundaries, were now welcomed. The food imagery symbolized human inclusion. And yet the symbolic collapse of food barriers carried practical consequences. If Gentiles were clean, shared meals were possible. If shared meals were possible, the dividing wall was falling. Christianity began to see dietary restrictions not as eternal boundaries, but as temporary symbols fulfilled in Christ. 3. Paul and Christian freedom. The Apostle Paul, once a strict Pharisee, articulated this transformation most clearly. He argued that food is morally neutral. Nothing is unclean in itself. All creation is good when received with gratitude. For Paul, salvation does not come through dietary compliance, but through faith in Christ. The ceremonial law served its purpose, preserving Israel, preparing for the Messiah, but was not the final goal. Holiness now flows from the Spirit, not from the menu. Yet Paul adds something crucial. Freedom must be guided by love. If eating something harms another's conscience, refrain. Christian liberty is real, but it is relational. Part 4. 3 paths, 1 question. So we stand before a fascinating reality. 3 religions. 1 shared patriarch. 3 conclusions about a single animal. Judaism sees covenant fidelity. Islam sees obedient submission. Christianity sees fulfilled symbolism and inner transformation. The disagreement is not about pigs. It is about how divine law functions. Is law eternal and unchanging in form? Is it universal and binding for all believers? Or is it preparatory, pointing beyond itself? Behind the dietary divide lies a deeper philosophical divergence. Where does purity reside? In obedience to external command? In disciplined submission? Or in inward renewal? Each tradition answers differently, and each believes it honors God in doing so. Part 5. The deeper question. After all the theology, all the history, all the argumentation, we return to something profoundly personal. For Christians especially, the New Testament insists, whether you eat or drink, do everything for the glory of God. The issue is not ultimately pork. It is purpose. Does your life reflect devotion? Does your heart seek truth? Are your actions aligned with the highest good you believe in? Some believers abstain from certain foods as personal conviction. Others celebrate freedom as gratitude. But the philosophical core remains. Purity is not found in the object consumed. It is found in the orientation of the soul. Final reflection. A pig became a symbol, a boundary, a theological dividing line spanning millennia. Yet perhaps the greater mystery is this. Human beings hunger not only for food, but for meaning. We crave belonging. We seek assurance that we stand on the right side of the sacred. The debate over pork reveals something universal, our desire to know. What makes me clean? What makes me faithful? What makes me accepted? Different traditions answer differently, but all wrestle with the same longing. And maybe that is where the real conversation begins. Not at the table, but in the heart.